And Dr. Lund is staying exactly where he is because he is presenting file item number 10, members, the report of the Delta Independent Science Board.
I have some copy of my notes if that would be useful to you.
We'd be happy to get your notes. Is this with jokes and everything?
I'll let you judge.
Okay. Thank you, sir.
Watch the cords down there.
Thanks. We've already covered one of the items on my report.
This is your summary of the last board meeting?
Summary of the last board meeting and the general activities we've been up to.
Okay.
Some of you recall I only joined the board on, I think, the 1st of November, so some of these items I have not been as involved in. So February 14th, 15th, last week, the Delta Independent Science Board revised the operating guidelines and elected its principal officers for the next period of time. Our principal officers now will be a past chair, and a chair-elect serving 2-year terms in rotation, at least nominally. Elections were then held for these positions. As of June 1st, Richard Norgard will move from the current chair position to the past chair position, Tracy Collier from Pacific Northwest will move from the vice chair position to the chair position, and Jay Lund, that's me, will become the chair-elect. So that's how we've reorganized ourselves, and we'll have some, hopefully that'll provide some continuity, and you'll know when you're going to get rid of each one of us, at least of the positions. We spent considerable time discussing a review of the December 2012 draft BDCP implementation structure, their draft Chapter 7. We were asked this has got to set a record. We were asked January 16th, 2013, by your chair, Phil Eisenberg, to review Chapter 7. And here we were, February 14th and 15th, less than a month with a draft. This is going to be an exception rather than
the only reason it happened is because I'd been to a bunch of meetings, that is Mr. Knopp, and you guys had complained endlessly about the fact you're asked to review a 17,000-page environmental impact report that is not yet completed and to turn it around fast. And I responded, here's 32 pages you might want to look at that help on your discussion that science ought to be involved.
Right. Thank you very much. It was definitely a length that we could choke down. So we discussed our review draft at our February 14th, 15th meeting and heard from several parties on the subject. The draft that I think you probably have seen a copy, it's been out circulated around a bit. The main points are that the BDCP science efforts should be integrated with science efforts of other agencies under a forthcoming Delta Stewardship Council science plan. This integration should be much more than coordination, as pointed out by the NRC report in 2012. State interests are better served if monitoring and science for BDCP are substantially independent from the management of BDCP. This gives everybody some faith in what's going on and a little more transparency, we believe. We encourage BDCP to work closely with the Delta Science Program and encourage the Delta Stewardship Council to help facilitate this. We have additional points in the draft, as you can read, on adaptive management integration, annual operations, and the clarity of the implementation structure that they put forth. At one point, you can see some what I call Cro-Magnon graphics of us trying to figure out what the structure was behind all the names. Personally, I really liked the idea of the annual operations plan, and I think we're seeing that also in the State Board's approach on the San Joaquin River, that there needs to be some coming together annually to figure out, well, what should we do in terms of implementing the various aspects of adaptive management and managing these particular parts of the system. We have considerable consensus on the main points expressed in the review and agreed to take additional comments on the draft up until Monday, February 25th. We will then produce a second draft to be discussed at our next meeting. The main overarching point is that to achieve the objectives of the state, BDCP should fit within a larger Delta science and management framework established by the state, which I guess in our view, my view anyway, is really under the Delta Stewardship Council's overall Delta plan. The state leadership in all this in this matter really is largely in the Delta Stewardship Council. The next section of my notes here is on the SED, which we already went through, so I'll just skip over that.
Okay.
The next big effort we've been working on, which has been in the works for quite a long time, and I'm coming into just the tail end of it, is to review habitat restoration and climate change and adaptation efforts on the habitat side. This review has involved many presentations and some site visits to restoration projects and a lot of different related scientific efforts. We've had some very interesting presentations to us. It's been very enlightening, even for me, who supposedly knows something about the system. We've got a draft that we presented and discussed at the February meeting of the DISB. Some preliminary findings are that considerable talent, resources, and enthusiasm is being invested in the Delta habitat restoration efforts, but these efforts seem to be largely independent. Everybody's doing their own little thing, all with good intent and with some enthusiasm, but lacking any overarching habitat plan, design, or vision. We're building a new Delta, in a sense, without knowing what we're shooting for, in a big sense. That's allowing some folks to get started, but maybe it's not where we really want to go in the long term, and that's something for us to think about. This risks having a habitat restoration activities that don't achieve state goals for restoration or that achieve them inefficiently at best. At worst, some of the habitat restoration efforts might interfere with the success of other habitat restoration efforts that might be more important for the state objectives. One of the examples that has come up in the conversations and presentations is the idea that when we restore some of the parts of the Delta to tidal marsh, that will dissipate some tidal energy. If you stand by the Carquinez Straits, you'll see the tide go up and down twice a day. That's a wave that embodies a limited amount of tidal energy. If that tidal energy is dissipated in one part of the Delta, then other parts of the Delta are seeing less of a wave, less of a tidal fluctuation. And so that implies that there might be a limit on the total amount of tidal area that you can restore, and it might vary and be important where in the Delta you restore that tidal marsh.
What you're saying is